Apparently I need to, get rid of some space on my computer. All right. Welcome to Melissa's Monday Madness. It is Monday, June 4th. You're not going to get this live because Facebook is not working with me live at all. Neither is YouTube for that matter. So I'm going to have to do some expert electronic digging in the next few days. But my guest today is Stephanie Smart, who is a I'm saying this wrong. A spiritual medium, spiritual mentor.
Soul Song Minister.
There we go.
Yeah, Soul Song Minister.
So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then we'll get on to asking some questions.
Yeah, so I'm a Soul Song Minister, and I chose that as a title, right? It's just a series of words, but for me, it's really about digging in and looking at getting to the core of who we are as a person and bringing that out into our lives. And so I use a variety of different modalities, techniques, energy work to do that. And it's all about figuring out what we need in our lives so that we have a thriving life, and then traversing that bridge and building those building blocks so that we can say yes every single day that we are living a legacy that we want to be living and having a thriving life.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So who is your ideal client for your coaching?
I primarily work with women. And women who are parents, in addition to who are looking at sort of looking around at having kids and in school, and now, and all of a sudden you're like, now what? But at the same time, there's so many of us, and this is my thing, right, is that we get caught up in this life and we get to where we're feeling like this pinball in the pinball machine, and we're just going and going and going and going, and all of a sudden we look around and we're like, what happened to my dreams and what happened to me? And I'm not living the path that I want to be living. I'm walking somebody else's life. And that really is my ideal client. And so we take that and figure out again and reconnect you back up to what your ideal life is, and help you remember that you're already whole, and that help coming home is about stepping back onto your path.
Absolutely. I love that. So why did you specifically go down that path? What was your reasoning behind it?
As a personal journey or as a business journey, because they're different.
Let's go into both. If you don't mind sharing, I'd love to go into both.
Yeah, that's fine. So personally, I'm a recovering addict and alcoholic. I've got about 30 years of sobriety, a little bit more. I also have 2 special needs kids, and I come from a very dysfunctional house, and so growing up. And so there's been a lot of turmoil and a lot of opportunities for me to look around and go, what happened? And I think, there's a couple of stories that I like to tell, and one being, when I was about 20, I attempted suicide a couple of times, and I remember coming out of one of those and having, that sense of just deep in my every cell of my body, knowing that we as a human being are here for a life that's filled with thriving. That this is a life that's supposed to be filled with joy. And that doesn't mean there's not hardships and things that we have to grow and expand, but that there needs to be joy, and that we are here for that experience, and that we are here for that vibrancy. And that if I wasn't having that, it was my choice to make it different. And that really started me down a path of getting clean and sober, but also down a path of acknowledging what I already knew, was that I was a person who dealt in the spirit world and saw, I play with dragons and mermaids, and I see shadow worlds, and I hear things, and I have a lot of those gifts. And also going down that path of being a person who works with others eventually. And the other, I guess the other part of it for me was at a moment in my early 30s, having an opportunity as a corporate trainer, and I was sitting in my office being yelled at by my boss for something I didn't have any clue what I was supposed to be doing. And it was one of those, I've got the phone way out here, and he's yelling at me for something, and I hear a voice, and this voice asked me, if today were the last day you have on this earth, would you be happy with the legacy you left? And there was no pause. It was no, I wasn't. And it took me aback because I had done a lot of work. I was doing a lot of things that I really loved, but somehow or another, I had gotten off of the path that actually brought me the most joy. And I think that that's so easy for us to do. I love teaching, I love training, I love speaking. But at the same time, I had gotten off of the path of being in that energetic world, of being with, the spiritual connection, looking at the alternative medicine component. And I had gotten out of that. And I hadn't known that I needed to change that direction until I got that wake up call. And so I think we come to these moments in our lives where we are given these opportunities of a crossroads. And we get these wake-up calls, we get these awarenesses, whatever you want to call them, an opportunity to say yes. And then when we get to that point, we get to make a choice. And what I want is for us to have the opportunity to have a choice that really is informed and has us saying yes to bringing us the most joy in our lives. And so after that sort of wake-up call, I went back into alternative medicine and got another college degree and got more certifications, and I ran a full clinic, and I really went down that road. And then I had a lovely child up here in my life. We had kids, and I've got this clinic where I'm seeing clients that all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not feeling it here anymore. And then this bundle of joy at home, and so I became a stay-home parent for many years. And I have 2 special needs kids who have needed a fair amount of intervention, and that became my focus. And then when I became ready to come back to work, I really looked around, and I used those same principles of what brings me the most joy. What is it that I want to be doing? What are those notes of my soul song, as I call them? And that wasn't seeing clients, doing body work. It wasn't sticking needles in somebody. It was more of that deep introspective, coming back and remembering who we are in our core, and coming home to who we are, and then bringing that out in the world, because then we get this ripple effect happening. And that for me brings the most joy. And I think for me, it's not only joy for me, but it's joy for everybody. And I talk about that a lot in my practice.
So me being a mindset coach, would you think that a lot of your clients, and even in your case yourself, with that position where you were being yelled at in that job, and you were, got the second degree and went back into the corporate life and running your own clinic, were those things that other people were telling you were your ideal life? Like, oh, this is great. You should, you've got a amazing job and things are going well. But in the end you're going, but this isn't for me. Right?
Yeah. But some of it also, I think, is, we start down a path and it sort of steamrolls on us. And that happened a little bit, but I was also, so when I was in my early 20s, I got in a pretty bad car accident, and I had been driving trucks for a living and doing other things on the side. And then I couldn't do that work anymore. And the state of California offered, they have this great vocational rehab program, at least they did back then. And I chose, I really did that soul searching. What do I want to be doing? And what's interesting, right, and we talk about coming home, is that I wanted to go to acupuncture school, or I wanted to like be in printing and books, and like I love that creative aspect of that. And they wouldn't pay for me to go to acupuncture school, and so I got a degree in printing and offset and graphic design and offset printing and running those printing presses, and I love that work. And so I think, we have multiple things that that bring us joy. But what had happened is that, I followed that path and ended up as a corporate executive, which is not what I wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
I love teaching. I love training. And so it's about stepping back and looking at what are the components of that, right? I was working 60, 70 hours a week, if not more, and driving all across, the state of Michigan for my job, and in my, my relationship was suffering, and that wasn't that thriving life. And so it really pulled me back into looking at, what is it that I need to be doing for me? Because I love teaching, I love training, and I loved that work, but I didn't like the part around it. And
Yeah.
so it's about looking at what makes me thrive. So from a mindset perspective, I would say that for me, it would be components of, one would be looking at, what is it for me that has me going, yes. And then also, what is it for me that has me being nourished
Yeah.
and going, right? Because we need both of those. We need those moments where we're like, oh, this is good, right? And that deep breath and that pause. And then we need the yes. And I had lost that balance.
Yeah. So for people listening, what would you say because in the pre-interview that you and I did, we talked about the soul song and authentic truth speakers. So can you explain that to the people listening? What are those to you, and what would that be to them?
Yeah, so I talk about soul song as being the notes of our soul song as those integral components of who we are, those non-negotiables that are the things that have to be happening no matter what. And I use this as a really good example of when my younger son was one. We found out he had cerebral palsy, and it sort of was like somebody pulled the rug out from under us. And so at that point, it was like, well, what do I need for me? What are those things that have to be happening in my life so that I can now be the parent that I need to be doing? And so looking at those non-negotiables in my life, right? And I sat down and I looked at it, and I talk about it as being like a vision board for our soul. So we're not looking outward at the material aspects, we're looking more inward at who we are and what those components are for us. So what are our passions and our dreams and our gifts and our core values? What are those things that have to be happening? Like for me, I have to be in nature. I have to have movement in my life. I have to be engaged with others in a spiritual environment. And those things were really important for me. And I talk about that as our components of our soul song, and that is what helps us sing our song, our individual song. And that comes from that leads a foundation to letting us then be an authentic truth speaker, which is about speaking our truth. And that is speaking our truth, and speaking being talking with words and writing and actions, but living our truth in all of its components. And really, what is that engagement with all of who we are, with the world, in as much authenticity as we can bring, that talks about illuminating the path for others, right? So we are showing up with who we are, who we know we are, bringing all of our gifts and our passions and our dreams to the table here, and then walking that path and being a role model, and shining our light. Because I think that we only make the world different by shining our light and being that true speaker, and bringing that out in the world is how we're going to make the world be a different place.
Absolutely. So what gets you excited other than work? What gets you excited? What do you like to do for fun?
I play Magic the Gathering with my son. We play a lot of card games as well. I love being outside in nature. I love being in the ocean. I grew up in Southern California. And so anytime I can get in the water, in not in the pool, but in water, I am very, very happy. And being outside and all of that, I can just like sit out in the hammock. I have this hammock that I sit up in my backyard, and you will find me sometimes with my dog in part of it, and my laptop in my lap, and working out there. And I love that stuff.
Absolutely. That sounds awesome. So what would you say to other people who are just starting out on their journey, who are just going through those notes of their soul song, who are going through, those trials and struggles, that are really opening their eyes to their own journey, their own spirituality, and their own path?
Yeah, so I think the bottom line is to, one, remember that you're already whole. we go through this process and people are like, well, I'm reclaiming this, or I'm doing a soul retrieval, and we lose part of who we are when we don't claim that we're already whole, and that there's this component of recognizing that in and of yourself right this minute you are you, and that you're glorious, and that we have a life filled out in front of us that lets us just keep walking that path of looking at what the next piece is, that there's not a rush, it's not a sprint, it's this life that's meant to be lived. And that, as we start to look at, oh gosh, I want these other things in my life, or oh, I have this character trait I don't really like and I want to make some changes. Treat yourself with the kind of grace that you would treat other people with, that it's a path, and we walk it, and that just keeping walking that path is the key, right? It's not about, I'm going to get to this thing tomorrow. It's, I'm just going to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and to build that ease into it, because that's how we have a life, right? It lets me
Absolutely.
go and have, say it's a beautiful day out, I'm going to go take a walk, instead of sitting here and recognizing, oh, I really should be writing content or something, or I should be going and working on something. There are moments for that, but to remember that there's also moments for the ease and the joy in life.
Have a healthy life balance.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but also like recognizing what that is, right? Because for me, when I started this journey, I sat in my therapist's office when I was 19 years old, or actually 21 years old, and she held up this that wonderful chart with the pictures of all the emojis and the faces showing you what feelings were, right? What was happy, what was sad, what was excited. I had no idea what any of those things were. It was completely foreign to me. And so for me, it was about, well, pick one and start to write, start to journal. If I was happy in this situation, what might that feel like for me? And so, it's about identifying, and so for me, just saying healthy balance, for a really new person, sometimes that is actually too big. That break it down and to pick one small thing and
Absolutely.
journal and write and go from there.
And find out what it means for you. I'm
Yes.
always
Yes.
telling my clients, it's not what everybody else tells you it should be. Whether you're going psychic intuitive coaching with me, or mindset coaching, or whatever it is, if I tell you that meditation means one thing, find your own thing, right? I'm going to tell you what it means for me versus what it means for other people. And then I'm going to tell you, okay, well, what does it mean for you? Like, let's
Absolutely.
get this train going, right?
Absolutely. It's all about you, because we're all
Yeah.
different. That's the beauty of it.
So why do people need you?
Because I help them come back to who they are. And I bring forth a huge variety of experience from that in my own journey, and my skill set of really being kind and gentle, and also keeping on point. What's our goal? What's our focus? And where are we going? And then how do we find you in that?
Absolutely. Well, do you have anything going on that you'd like to tell people about? I'm all out of questions. So what do you have going on? What do you want people to know? Whatever it is you want to say, let's open that up.
Yeah. So I said yes to spirit, and something that has been hounding me, in the back of my mind, those dreams and passions that we talk about, something that has not been I've been able to let go of, and that is hosting a full day event. I've done weekend classes, but really like a retreat. And so I am doing Reigniting Your Inner Fire retreat in September here in Indianapolis. It is a full day retreat. I've got 2 other speakers coming in, and it's all focused on reconnecting you to your passions and dreams, uncovering your superpowers, and then becoming a self-care goddess. And just like anything, ending with an action plan. And this is the thing, right? We go to these events, or we read this self-help book, or we sign up for this coaching program. But if you don't actually take action on what you learned, then you've wasted your time and money and not taken that step forward. And so we will end with an action plan. And just like any coaching that I do, it's all about the action that has to follow, because that's
Yeah,
where the integration happens. That's where the aha moments happen and the integration, so that you can weave that into your life. So that's
absolutely.
coming up in September, and my that's innerfireretreat.com is that website.
And for anybody watching, she will share the information on that on my website on Melissa's Monday Madness. You'll be able to find the replay for this video, as well as Stephanie's website and contact information. So that's pretty
Absolutely.
epic. I love that.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm excited about it.
I bet. So I
Yeah,
was
it's
going
going
to
to be
say
a
something and
lot
I
of
can't
fun.
remember. Oh, yes. So the coaching. So that retreat sounds awesome. Action plan. I love that. In my own coaching, my signature
Mhm.
package, it's identification, lessons, creating that action plan, and implementing it. By the end of
Absolutely.
7 weeks, you're implementing that action plan. So with some follow
Absolutely.
up. So I love that. Um,
Yeah, all my coaching has that. You have to have that, right? We talked about that when we did our little pre-interview thing. You
yeah,
have to have the action. You have to have the implementation. Otherwise,
absolutely.
it's not. Don't do it, right? If you're not willing to then take what you learned and actually like integrate that into your life, don't waste anybody's time, because that's where the magic happens, and that's where the beauty happens.
Yep. So
So thank you so much for having me.
absolutely. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate
Yeah.
it. I know over the phone we said about an hour, but I've been cutting it back to about half an hour. Just
Yeah.
because, you keep people's attention a little bit more when it's less time. I know if I'm in an hour-long webinar, I'm like, okay, let's go. So
Yes,
yeah.
less is definitely more.
Yes. So
Yes.
for anybody watching, this is Stephanie Smart. Again, you can find her information on my website, on my YouTube, wherever. Look for her information. She'll also be sharing it on my Facebook page. I am, of course, glowing in this beautiful sunlight. It has been raining
Yes.
all day. It was 13 here today. For those of you in the States, I don't know what that converts to, so I don't care. Um, but it's been raining all day, and it's 7:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and I am getting flooded in halos of sunlight. So you want some
Yes, it's
spiritual?
beautiful. The energy of it's,
Here,
yeah, it's
Stephanie.
great.
Pardon me?
The sun is beautiful.
Oh, yes. I'm allergic
Yeah.
to it, though.
Oh, how
Yeah.
was
So
that?
for everybody watching, you're getting like full-blown halo glowing Melissa, which is great. This is epic. I think you should totally rock on with Stephanie and I. If you
Yeah.
want more information, send one of us a message. Let us know what you're looking for. We'll let you know if we can help you, because we can't help everybody. So
Hmm.
much love to you all. Thank you again, Stephanie, for joining me. I do have to go, and my husband's got to go back to work.
Ah,
So I will
thank you
say
so much for having me.
absolutely much love to you all, and have a
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful week.